Chapter 1. The relationship process. Should I read this? Should I do an audiobook?
Oh, an audiobook, yes.
What did you think?
I thought you were gonna just read it.
Oh, right now? No, not
Don't do that.
No, I could record an audiobook, maybe in a British accent or something. All right, so we're gonna, like, as promised, first chapter is the relationship process. And we're not gonna read it to you, because if you want to get the book, you can read it. We're just gonna give you a little overview nuggets here. So the 3 topics are why we create relationships, why we stay in relationships, and why we end relationships. Why do we create relationships?
I can only go from my own life experience, which was greatly foggy. I just thought relationships is something everyone gets to have. You know,
Gets to have.
yeah.
Do you think that it's like a prize?
No, it's sort of like
Gets to have.
everybody who's born gets to have feet, you know, or
Okay. So if you think about relationships, do you only think romantic relationships, or do you think like friends, family, like any relationships with other people, business? Or is it just like kind of like romantic partnership? Where does your mind go?
I did not grow up in a world that ever defined what they are. Everyone just had a bunch.
Okay.
And they had dysfunctional ones and fun ones. And sometimes they'd have sex, and a lot of times they'd fight, and other times they would just go to the mall and have a good time, or they'd party. Like, a relationship was the thing you do to have somebody else in your life to do all that stuff with.
Okay.
And I didn't really understand what the depth of it could be.
Mhm.
I didn't understand at all that a relationship could be a gigantic mirror. And I certainly had no concept that I was creating the relationships that I was going to have.
Attracting,
So, yeah.
creating, inviting, yeah. So when I wrote this book, my approach of this is from a very outside perspective. So relationships to me mean anybody in your life. So you can have relationships with coworkers, romantic partners, friends, kids, everybody in your life you have a relationship with. And for the context of this book, it helps if you work with your relationship with a non-partner, like kind of work with a relationship with a coworker as an example, because you're going to have an easier time looking at your own role with your coworker than you are with like your spouse or your partner, because there's a lot less emotion usually. Relationships bring up emotion and show us all the amazing and nasty things about ourselves. So if you think about coworkers, I think that's like a kind of a fun place to look at this, because you can have amazing coworkers that you go out to happy hour with and you get along great and they're fine. You can have coworkers that you just dread seeing. And if you look at why in that arena, it's a different feeling, but it's definitely still a relationship. So you have an opportunity to look.
They're a lot more complex than I understood them to be.
Mhm.
As for most of my childhood, teenage years, young adult life, relationships were a girlfriend and friends. And didn't realize, not consciously, that everything in my life was a relationship.
Yeah.
But why we have them, we have a much deeper reason for that, for the answer to that. But on the surface, it's a really fun exploration, because when she gave me the manuscript, she invited me an opportunity to share my own response to it and add a section. And I started writing, because I'm like,
yeah, I had this idea because I wrote this book 5 or 6 years before it was published, and it was just kind of sitting in my Google Drive. And I thought, we finally have this amazing relationship. So do you want to contribute to this and give your perspective? And he was kind of like, more, I mean, maybe short, sort of, kind of, but he started to write like kind of his reactions to what I had written in the book. And I think he's looking that up right now.
yeah, I was just trying to find it, but if I can't, then.
But the idea was that our experience of each other is our own. So if you have a coworker, I like this example because it's kind of soft. If you have a coworker you really don't like, you may have another coworker that's best friends with that person. So whatever that person is bringing up in you isn't triggering your other person over here. Like it's, we all experience each other differently. So, oh, did you find it?
Yeah,
Okay.
you were having a really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just about how we experience each other. So the whole point about having a relationship is that you have the opportunity to experience someone and understand why they're in your life. And whether it's for, you've heard, a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Somebody might come in for a couple days and completely change your life and disappear, and that's their role in your life. So when you can understand that these relationships are pieces of your puzzle that are here to help you evolve and grow, it becomes a lot more fun to have relationships and understand why you're having them.
Yeah, I think the interface between the two of us here is that I was in an 18-year marriage that ended about 5 years before you and I met. And during that whole time, my nervous system was just trying to reset for all sorts of reasons. And for me, I just started to really understand what a relationship could really mean. So then when she shows me the manuscript, she's already put in obviously enough time to write the whole thing. And so I came directly up against a really well-developed series of questions and thoughts on it. And it challenged all of my concepts, going back to our previous video where I was right and she's right. Well, what I thought I knew about relationships at the time was right for me, but it certainly wasn't right for what they should be. I wrote, ultimately, I believed all relationships were defined in two ways, good and bad. Very simple creature. I'll just read what I wrote here.
Okay. So this is not in the book. We decided ultimately that it would be better to just publish the book as it was, with acknowledgement that my awesome ex and my kick-ass partner are both significant people in my life, and that's wonderful. But what he wrote is really powerful, so we wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, and we could actually even put it in the notes,
Yeah,
so you can read some of it. But it forced me to look at it. I'm coming from a place where I can actually answer this with my own convictions now. But when I first wrote this, it really forced me to explore it. I thought relationships were supposed to be a thing we all get to have. In my head, friends and relationships were different things. My concept of a relationship was fog banks of having someone special to bond with, maybe possibly hopefully have sex together, maybe share some laughs. I had no concept. Connecting with people could personally be challenging or require that I show up as a real person. I've never thought of myself as fake, but I had so much turmoil in my childhood that you have to really know who you are if you're going to show up as that person in a relationship. I really never knew how to behave on a deeper level. My upbringing wasn't helpful. Growing up with a single mom in the 70s was a funhouse of confusion. She was very young. She was a hippie, so she had a free love sex drive and a peer group to enable her. I was surrounded by sexuality and freedom with everyone without a molecule of context. I assumed everyone at school knew the same things that I did, but apparently they didn't. Apparently other kids didn't read Hustler or go to the bar with their mom. Who knew? My inner Jeremie brain was overexposed and underinformed. My own efforts to have relationships were just as clumsy as a dancing bowling ball with brain freeze. And when things got complicated, I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to work it out. It was just, I guess, something I have to get over. And then I took it personally, like it's me.
Dancing bowling ball with brain freeze. That's where I'm at right now.
Oh,
Trying to contain myself. So we all come from different backgrounds, our childhoods, everything influences us. It changes our behaviors. What we watched when we were growing up influences our behaviors. If we watched modelings of good relationships, it's like watching something it's like an instruction manual. Like, this is how you do it. So from what I just read, like if you're watching that as your instruction manual, it's a little different. Like, how do I do this when I'm a child and I have this overexposure? What did you say? Overexposed and underdeveloped?
yeah, underinformed.
Underinformed, yeah. So you see, you get all this input and you don't know what to do with it. Like it's not, doesn't make sense.
So at this point, I can answer this for myself very simply. There's two reasons why we create relationships. when you're underinformed, you create them to have things in your life that you think you're supposed to have because you're not even necessarily sure why you want them, or you create them to create a connection in, to the best of your understanding, what a connection means and whether or not you even really know what a relationship means. Now, why I create relationships is so I can understand myself better, so I can show up as my true self, and that I can see how to be much more connected, unconditionally loving, and to help the people around me also feel the way I feel like people should be treated.
Yeah, that's the evolved relationship, is understanding that anyone in your life, you have an opportunity to love them and to help them and uplift them and empower them, regardless of your relationship status. You're humans and we have that opportunity to help each other. So when you have that freedom to do that and like show up for people without feeling like, well, I can't love and support my friend because it would diminish my relationship with this person. Like that's a very common situation, but
Yeah.
it's something that we don't live that way. And that's been incredibly freeing and rewarding, that we have the freedom to love people. And I don't mean date people as that. I mean open-heartedly see and love and accept and really love people.
Yeah.
So we can influence and help a bigger amount of people than if we said, oh, we love each other and we don't want to share that, we don't want to help other people. When we do this together, it's an exponential thing that whoever we're helping receives, which is so fun.
I think what would be helpful for you guys to hear is, at the root of almost everything that we're sharing, there's two worlds that we're addressing. The world that a lot of people, including the world I once lived in for a very long time, is unconscious, run by programs, personal beliefs, all sorts of things that are probably not entirely helpful. They're based on patterns and repetition and experiences, and they're all mostly unconscious, undefined, or if they are defined, it's from all of the programs lying to you or trying to keep you in this safe place that it's. The other world that we live in is the one where you've done the work, you've become conscious of the programs, you've disrupted the patterns, and when somebody asks you for information about yourself, you're very self-aware, and you're on a journey to make that even stronger. Yeah. So when we ask, why do we create relationships, we're addressing those two worlds.
Definitely. There's a lot of people and we all do this in some way. So I'm calling it every single person out, including us. Yeah. We like to be comfortable as humans. We really like that. And sometimes being comfortable means that you are not willing to move out of a relationship that's uncomfortable. So your discomfort becomes your comfort because you don't know anything else. And that's a space we have a lot of compassion for, because people who are in pain forget that there's something else. And until they have something that is a catalyst to spark that question, like, wait a minute, there's got to be something, this has got to be better. Like, is this all there is? Until something happens, that person will stay in their pattern and keep riding that forever unless something jars them. So the concept of relationship, I'm totally losing where I was going with this. Oh, the attachment to discomfort, like that is, it's such a thing. So a big thing that we do is we acknowledge when we're uncomfortable about things, and we drive each other crazy with it sometimes. But if I feel it or he feels it, it's present, it's in our space, and we bring it up and talk about it and question it, like, well, what is that, where's that coming from? And most of the time there's something from our past or a belief about ourselves, or somebody we heard say something that just stuck so hard that we're like, it's how we think. So those programs are deep, and having the compassion for yourself to realize that you can't just like flip the switch off and be good. You gotta like look at things one at a time, make these micro adjustments and change your life gradually. So relationships will keep handing you those little things to change.
Yeah, and until you learn from them, your relationships, this was a hard piece for me to own, was that based on my programs and my stories and my patterns, I'm only capable of having a certain kind of a relationship.
Mhm.
If you're in a grapefruit field, you're not going to find oranges. And if you do, it's an exception to the rule. It's not what's growing there. And so if you spend your whole life wandering around in one batch of trees and you're like, I want bananas and nobody gives them to me, the grapefruits are like, guess what?
I got grapefruits.
Yeah. And so relationships are
I like your grapefruit
grapefruit
analogy.
trees.
It's a great field. It's an orchard of grapefruits.
Yeah.
I don't like grapefruits and he does. So I think you'd be happier in a grapefruit orchard than I would.
And what's cool is then when you understand that, it gives you a really good idea into that second part of it, which is why we stay in relationships.
Yeah, why we stay is often a pattern we don't want to break. It's exactly what we were just talking about. It's a thing that we're used to it. It's comfortable enough. It's not so completely unbearable that we're miserable, but honestly, we're kind of miserable. If we're being honest with ourselves about whether our relationships are serving us, it can be a huge wake-up call, and it's scary to decide you're going to change relationships. Even if you have friends that are just not aligned with you anymore, like deciding to stop spending time with that person because they're consistently busting through your boundaries and disrespecting your reality, and it's just not working anymore. It doesn't feel good anymore. It's a signal that your journey is over with that person, and that has to be okay if you want to feel better. So there's a piece of self-love in taking stock of who's in your life and whether or not they're benefiting you or limiting you.
I broke down for myself a number of categories as to why I stayed in relationships. One of them was I just didn't know I could do better. I'll see if I could just zip through them. First one, I was young and I didn't know what I didn't know. Next one, I didn't want to be alone. Third one, loyalty, vows, and that weird, mysterious belief that things can change.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And then there was a distorted idea about hope. Like, why throw in the towel? It could change any day now. Look how hard we're working. And then there's an important one a lot of people don't realize: religious beliefs.
Oh, I think a lot of people realize that.
Let me just put it this way. This is just one of those hard statements that if you're in a relationship that is not going to let your life be happy, you've already had the thoughts. You've probably fantasized, what would it be like if they died and I could be free? Because that seems to be the only way society lets you out of something that isn't working. If you're in a religious situation, you've got understandable, and I'm not judging any of it because I was in the Judeo-Christian world for a very long time. I made vows on an altar to my God, and I didn't think that I could just lightly let them go. But the bottom line was, regardless of any of those reasons, like, do you want to be alone? No. Well, are you suffering and struggling and having an awful time? You think being alone would be worse than that? The idea that, well, I'm married to this person, there's no turning back. Is that really what you want for yourself?
Yeah, and the fear of disappointing other people, which played a big part in my divorce, because I was married to such a wonderful human, and the process we went through, and 5 years of separation and very amicable and conscious divorce and everything through that. I had a huge fear about what everybody would think and our families, and like, wow, why are you doing this? He's such a great guy. I'm like, I know, that's why this is so hard. But the overarching story was that we were on paths that needed to be separated and then move forward in a different way. So that's that why we stay thing, is that we're unwilling to end our current story. So we're writing a story and it's just going through the motions at some point. And if it's not evolving and we're not growing and we're not expanding and we're not excited, then that story might be coming to a close. So having the courage and I mean, it takes a lot, but having the courage to end your story and finish it and complete it and write your book and put it on the shelf and then start writing a new book with that person, it takes a lot, and it's not easy, but going through that process frees you to become the next version of yourself that your life is waiting to have show up. So
Yeah, somebody once told me, oh, the other thing that we stay in relationships for, children.
yes,
That
don't do that.
I'm believing more and more, especially with millennials and Gen Z, and the example that us Gen Xers and especially the baby boomers set, that most people end up divorced or miserable. The whole idea that you stay together for the kids, I think, is finally losing steam and dying where it should. Like,
Yeah.
Kids learn what you model far more than what you tell them.
Mhm.
You can say, oh, mommy and daddy love each other, and they know what's true. And if you want to teach your children how to be simps and how to be abused, and or how to settle or how to compromise things that matter to them, then yeah, stay in that marriage no matter what. But if you want to show them
Self-respect.
all the things that you want them to have, then you need to make serious decisions about why you're staying in a relationship, agreement, partnership, marriage, whatever.
Yeah, I think self-respect is a big piece of it, because when we give ourselves up, we lose ourselves to a relationship that isn't working anymore, and we lose our self-respect. And when our kids see that, we're modeling that for them. Like, oh, I obviously know my parents aren't happy, but I guess this is just how you do this.
Yeah.
So whatever you're modeling for them is real. You're playing a movie on a screen in real life, and you're showing them how to relate and how to treat each other and how to treat yourself in that relationship. So
Yep.
staying in it, and I know a lot of people who stayed in it and a lot of people who have left serious organized religion, and it's not easy, and it's always worth it. Every single time, everybody who's gone through that fire has come out free, happy, and better off, and with more clarity and personal power and understanding of who they are, why they're here, and what they want on this planet. So sometimes you gotta just go through it and ask for help.
Yeah. Well, yes, you know, I'm sure any body language expert will see that I'm squeezing my hands.
Yeah.
That's because it's very close to my heart. For sure.
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, I waited in my mind constantly. Constantly. What if, and what about, and what about, and what about? And there were so many reasons I'd stay in a marriage that I knew was, you know. And then another side to this too is, are you the catalyst for why things may not be working in your relationship? And are you unwilling to let go? And maybe your partner, like, if you were just to say, like you open up the lotto ball chute and when all the balls come out, like, bye, you know.
Yeah.
Are you the one holding things up?
Yeah, that's it too, is looking in the mirror and understanding what your role is in the relationship. So it really takes ownership and self-awareness of who you are and how you show up, which is a lot of personal work. If you're in that space where you're feeling this and you're asking this question and you're watching videos like this and you're like, what the heck? Keep asking questions. The resources will show up, the answers will show up, whatever you need will make sense, and move towards it, and do it at your pace. You know, like I said, it took me took me almost 5 years to end a 10-year marriage. Like, and that's crazy, but it's also what we did, and it was perfect. And we ended our marriage on a high note. We actually went on a month-long vacation at the end of our 10-year marriage. So you can do that, and that's, you know, people call it conscious separation, conscious divorce, whatever. that's kind of a newer thing, because it does take a really strong ability to look in the mirror and go, okay, what's true here, and be really honest about it.
Yeah. And this is a weird side note, well, not
Mm.
weird. The whole issue of jealousy.
Mm.
It's not something either of us struggle with in our marriage. It's part of where all the gratitude for what we have comes from. I want you to be as free as possible, free of my shadows and my shit, and free from restrictions that keep you from being the loving, amazing, magical woman you are. As an example, I was just thinking about how simple this is for you and I to overlook, but I could see how this could end relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there's in the dedication, she dedicates the book to her ex-husband and to me, her current husband.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me, I'm like, wow, I know people that would be like, baby, why did you dedicate it to your ex-husband? He's not, I could hear the fight happening.
Mhm.
It's funny to even bring it up because it's like, it's such an alien language.
It's pretty uncommon. And honestly, the reason that when I made this cover with all the triple X's, it's like that like subconscious thing, like, you know, triple X means what it means in the industry, right? But this catches your eye subconsciously because of that. So this is harder to look at than this.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a piece there with looking at yourself in the mirror is harder to do than distracting yourself and staying in a relationship that doesn't work.
You know, and
That's a little secret. I haven't really talked about that anywhere.
that's true.
Yeah.
And another interesting little subtlety I noticed is it's a lot easier for a guy to look at porn than to look at his relationship.
So it's integrated that the reason that I wrote this was because I've done this, I'm experiencing this, I'm living this, and I have a kick-ass partner, I have an awesome ex, and I am an awesome ex. And you may not get the same stories from all of my exes, but that's not my business.
And you know what else? She and I talk about each other's exes
Oh yeah.
in great detail,
Mhm.
in details that
Yeah.
would be greatly challenging to a lot of relationships. But if you can't do that, then you're not having the maximum like space to operate in.
Certainly is not for everyone.
No.
So the last piece of this chapter is why we end
Yep, why we end relationships.
And obviously the stuff we've been talking about is kind of helps you understand that, but ending them because they're done is the real answer. They're done for some reason. They may be done because it's abusive. You may have married someone and then you both change drastically and you're on different paths and it's no longer good and you're taking it out on each other. You may have someone in your life that is too much of a mirror and you need to go be by yourself and do some more personal work before you come back into a relationship situation.
You know, you might end a relationship because
It's Thursday.
Yeah. Or it's
I think you were going somewhere with that.
I was, and I don't even necessarily think I had a right idea.
Okay.
But
the idea is that it's okay to end relationships.
Yes.
And it's also okay to stay in a relationship with awareness of why you're in it and knowing that you're not quite complete. Maybe you're not done with that journey yet. So having the experience and making sure that you know the purpose of that relationship and you get to the end of it. So by the
Yeah.
time you're done, you end it, and then that experience and understanding becomes an integrated piece of you, and you don't attract another person and do it again.
Yeah, so a pre-conscious person would end a relationship because they're not getting what they want, or this person doesn't listen or understand, or we just grew apart. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be negative. It just sometimes the fire goes out, whatever the case is. But a pre-conscious person doesn't realize that the relationship that they're ending or in the middle of having ended on them is probably a pattern in their life. And the pre-conscious person doesn't look at the factors that are all internal, which is all it is. And then they go, well, I'm going to go to that person. And somehow it ends up the same way again. A conscious person ends a relationship going, wow, the fullness of everything we were meant to have together seems like it's like flowered as far as it's gonna go.
Mhm.
And you can feel it. When I look back on relationships, I'm like, yeah, there were plenty of times where it just was meant to be done and we lingered around and
Yeah, what else should we do? Like, I don't know, I think we're done.
yeah.
And there, you know, there's people in my life that I know that have also had these conscious separations and divorces, and they get along fine. And it does exist. It's rare, honestly. It's very rare, and it takes a level of self-awareness and personal work. But we are confident that it's possible for each one of us to find and have the life we want. So
Now underneath this, the deep personal work is the real answer. Why do we create relationships? Ask yourself these questions in a mirror, because that literally is the only person you are having a relationship with. And it may seem like really like, what the heck is he talking about? Some part of you may feel like, I kind of get it. Stick with it, because you have relationships because of how you relate to yourself. Why you stay in a relationship is because you're trying to understand something about yourself. You're trying to relate to yourself in some way that you just can't seem to understand.
not getting it.
And sometimes you end a relationship with yourself when a part of you has grown and evolved, and you no longer need that. I have lots of beliefs in my life that are now anathema to the way I want to live my life now. It's like if you go to the 3rd grade and you complete it and you're now in 11th grade, there's no way you could go back and sit in a 3rd grade desk and relate anymore. You're physically, mentally, emotionally completely evolved.
Yeah. Evolved. That's the word. That's the word right there. So if you are not evolving, you can stay content in a poor relationship that does not serve you for the rest of your life. And if that's what you choose to do, that's okay. You probably won't be watching this video if that's the case. But a lot of people do that because becoming evolved and growing and learning and if you start in kindergarten, you go through school, if we continue to have grades and challenges and state testing throughout our lives, and we had like checkpoints, how's your relationship? Like, it might actually be a really good idea, like a 5-year state testing on your life path.
Or you're like, when you're sick of the test and you get that card in front of you and you just draw pictures of Mickey Mouse, like that's how you answer all the tough questions.
Yeah.
And you're like, I passed.
So life is an adventure and a journey. And if you want to experience, explore, evolve, and grow, sometimes it sucks. And sometimes you have to make these decisions so you can get to your next level, go through the fire and grow. And it's totally worth it.
Yep. And so the next video is part 2. When the relationship is done.
Yeah, we'll talk about some super triggers on when to know. And a lot of that is about self-care and self-awareness. So we'll keep digging on it. Thanks for watching.